Okay, fifth graders, we're going to do a video that's just all review, and I've kind of flipped through the book and just wanted to give you some basic problems that we've done since the beginning of the year. And I'm just going to look at them here really quick, and then I'll maybe give you a couple examples on how to do some of these, although hopefully you guys can do these. So look at number one here. It's just simply, it's 24.61 adding 22.39. And just remember, when you're adding or subtracting decimals, the important thing to do is just to keep the decimals lined up. So if I had 71.36 and I was adding 2.19, look at how the decimals are lined up, 19, and then let's say 0.05, you can see how I'm keeping the decimals lined up, and that's really important, okay? And all the decimals, are one above the other, and we have the ones place and the tens place, and if there was hundreds, and then we have the tenths place, which would be right here, and then the hundredths place and the thousandths place. You just keep everything lined up when you're adding or subtracting decimals. When you're multiplying decimals, and you have some of those problems, and dividing decimals, that's a little different. If you're multiplying decimals, that you're not so worried about lining things up. 2.67, and I'm multiplying it by 0.53, okay, and they're being multiplied together. Now in this case, that was probably not a good example. They're lined up. But how about if it was 2.67 times 0.5? Well, I just put 0.5 right here. So it's not important lining them up. But what is important, and you guys probably remember this, is you got to count how many places over you'd have to move the decimal to make everything a whole number. And then whatever your answer is, let's say here's our answer, okay? Then you count how many places you've moved the decimal over. So in this example, it's 4 places. So then you'd start right here, and you'd move 1, 2, 3, 4. So our answer would be X point, whatever it is. In this problem here, how many places do you have to move the decimals? 1, 2, 3. So whatever your answer is, you'd start at the far right and then move it over 1, 2, 3 places. Sometimes the decimal might end up in front of the number, or sometimes they might only move 1 place, but that's just the important thing to remember when you're dealing with decimals and you're multiplying them. So just keep that in mind as you do these problems here. And then dividing numbers with decimals. Okay, so think about that. If we have a number here, 436, and I'm dividing it by, let's say, 0.7, we can't divide numbers by a number that has a decimal. So we got to move the decimal over to make it a whole number. So instead of 0.7, it becomes 7. But then remember, whatever you do on the outside, you've got to do on the inside. So if you move the decimal over once on the outside, then you've got to move it over once on the inside. So you'd add a 0, essentially, because 436, where's the decimal? The decimal's right there. But you'd have to add a 0 to move it over once. So it becomes 4,360. And this becomes 7, of course. So hopefully you guys kind of remember that. Let's see here. So adding fractions. Let's take a look at this one. Adding fractions. The denominator, the bottom number, is the same. So you would just add them. If they're not the same, you need to make them the same. So if I'm adding, let's say, 5/8, and I'm adding that to 1/2, we need to find a common denominator. The first thing I do is I turn it into a vertical problem, vertical as in being up and down. What's the common denominator? What's the number that that we would use? Well, 8 would make the most sense because 8 goes into 8, of course, and 2 goes into 8. And if you remember, you'd say 2 goes into 8 how many times? 4 times. And 4 times 1 is 4. 8 goes into 8 once, and 1 times 5 is 5. Well, now, take a look. The denominators are the same. So now you can just add the numerators. I think you guys remember that. I hope you do. What's 4 and 5? 9. So it becomes 9/8. That's the answer. Now this is, do you remember what this is called? When the numerator, the number on top, is larger than the number on the bottom, the denominator, it's called an improper fraction. And you ask yourself, well, how many times does the bottom number fit into the top number? Well, 8 goes into 9 once. What's left over? If you were to subtract, there's 1 left over. And then the denominator stays the same. So 9/8 is the same as 1 and 1/8. Okay, so when you are, let's see here, so that was adding fractions, then adding, how are we doing on time here? We're good on time. Adding fractions with whole numbers, you can change those whole numbers into a fraction. So if I had 2 3/4, how would I change that into a fraction? Well, 4 times 2 is 8, plus 3 is 11. 11 over 4 is the same as 2 3/4. And then if I was adding that to 1/2, then again, I would just set it up vertically, and then I would look for a common denominator. Or if I was subtracting, same thing. Find a common denominator. What else here? Subtracting fractions, multiplying fractions. Okay, so when you multiply fractions, all right, that's one. Let me give you an example of that. See if you remember. So if I was to multiply 1/2 times 7/8, what do? You multiply straight across. 1 times 7 is 7. 2 times 8 is 16. There's your answer. Just multiply straight across. If one of them is a mixed number, remember this is a mixed number, a whole number with a fraction, you would change that into a fraction to multiply them. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5, so this becomes 5 over 2. And if I was multiplying it by 7/8, same thing, just multiply straight across. 5 times 7 is 35. 2 times 8 is 16. Remember what that's called? An improper fraction. How many times does 16 go into 35? Well, what's 16 plus 16? That's 32. Goes in twice. There's 3 left over, 3/16. So 35 over 16 is also 2 3/16 as a mixed number. Okay, I'm almost out of juice. Oh my gosh, how did that happen? Let me plug it in. Wow, that was close. Okay. And then dividing. Last example I'll give you, dividing fractions. So if I was to do something like 1/2 divided by 1/6, remember, keep, change, and flip. So I'd keep it as 1/2, I'd change it to multiplication, and I'd flip it. The last one I'd flip. So what do we do when we're multiplying fractions? Well, I just showed you. Remember, you just multiply straight across. 1 times 6 is 6. 2 times 1 is 2. Oh, I wonder if it's not going to work because I was playing that music. Oh man, I hope not. That would be a serious bummer. And then 2 goes into 6 3 times. And so the answer would be 3. Okay, I'm going to end the video here, and I just want you guys to do these problems. There's 1 through, what do we got here, 17. And we'll check those tomorrow. Okay, that's it.